Welcome back to Small Brand Mentality, where we have conversations with folks who are disrupting the running industry with their mindset and their background and their perspective and what they bring to the table. And this week, we're excited for a special guest ahead. This week, we're joined by Townsend on the podcast. Now, you might be familiar with Running Supply. This is a platform that Cole created and doesn't take a ton of credit for, but does a ton of work to bring us the latest drops, trending styles, and what's next in performance fashion, as he likes to say. And the cool thing that we get to talk about today is how everything kind of culminated into what you see today for Running Supply and all of the kind of skills Cole picked up along the way to bring us this finished and final product that we love so much. But also it alludes to what's coming, right? As the running fashion space continues to evolve, Cole is perpetually staying one step ahead. So please enjoy this conversation as we touch on everything from the different channels that he's created with Running Supply, just trends that he's seeing, who he's really into right now, and his predictions for the year ahead. So please enjoy this conversation with Cole Townsend of Running Supply. Cool. Well, welcome, Cole Townsend. It's good to see you again, man.
Thanks for having me, Drew. Appreciate it.
Of course. Well, I know that you and I go back several years, which is really exciting to kind of like re-up in a conversation that's really specific and on stuff that you're doing that I'm really excited about. But I don't want to skip past like the lore of Cole and bringing us up to speed before we jump right into Running Supply stuff. So I know obviously we met when you were post-grad, and I was post-grad as well. You ran at Williams and then entered the Boston running scene for at first at Battle Road, then Tracksmith Hares as well. And that's when we met. Got to know more about your, I don't know, just your positioning in like the intersection of fashion and running, just by the way you styled yourself, but also the stuff that interested you the most. But was it always something that was that apparent to you, or did that kind of develop over time?
Yeah. So like for me, I feel like my parents were always like kind of stylish, or like, my mom, I feel like always like got me kind of like cute outfits and stuff like that in school. And like my sisters ones, like cared about that stuff, even though, she pulled the whole mom thing and doesn't do it quite as much for herself. But like I think she has pretty good taste, and I feel like kind of passed that on. And when I got really obsessed with running when I was in high school, and I had a Tumblr where I kind of like posted cool photos, and like it would be anything from like race photos that I definitely ripped from like whatever professional photographer, sorry. And also would post like cool gear on there. And I remember I went to Green Mountain Running Camp, and like at some point in time Nike came by, which was cool, and like they talked to us about what we'd like to see in gear. And I was like, oh, I would love to see like, patterned shorts, because like I buy the girls' tempo shorts because like they have zigzags on them, and like that's a lot more fun. And like, now we're here and coming full circle, getting away from the patterns because things got a little too out there. So like for me, it was always like it started in high school. Like right when I started running, I was like interested in kind of like every aspect of running, from like performance to shoes, like footwear. I like got into the whole barefoot running thing for a little bit. Still appreciate it for what it's worth, but not as insane about it as I once was. Yeah.
Well, I love it. The way that I know you is very much through the lens of like you taking an academic approach to a lot of the stuff and being like a researcher first and foremost, and kind of I know there's a period of time like you were doing Tim and Tom like training block because that was like interesting and that was in vogue, and you were like really curious about seeing the effects in real time of it. And the way that you talk about kind of the fashion side of things and its intersection with running, it's all about the research and consumption of it in order to like develop opinion. So that to me has always stood out. And then also just the love of sneakers. I'm sure you were like a product manager's dream at that running camp, that you actually had an informed opinion, or like that you took the time to express it in a succinct way, which I think very few people, even beyond high school years, have the ability to articulate what trends they align with and why. So I'm sure that was something that stood out maybe when you look back at your own history in that regard.
Yeah, it was like I can't remember exactly how it went, but it was really cool to like be exposed to that sort of thing and like have someone come in and be like, you know, they would send kind of like their Eakins or whatever with like the Nike van to a lot of the different camps and like get kids feedback and like show them new stuff that was coming out. And like I really miss that era of like of running, at least for myself. You know, I don't know if they're still doing that with Nike camps, but like that was so cool at the time. And I feel like that is part of the reason that like Nike still harbors a lot of like positive opinion is because like the people that are around my age, a bunch of people that are a little bit older, like still remember how much like Nike invested in like cross country and stuff like that when you're a kid. And like it was so cool then. It's like even if they kind of were sliding over the last few years, like deep down, you're like Nike's still like they can come back at any point in time. And they've definitely been taking steps to do that since their last like big shift over the last year or so.
Yeah, there's so much nostalgia baked into those moments where I know even folks who have their team issued Nike gear still enjoy breaking out those t-shirts and shorts and tights with the logo on it that they received in 2008, 2012, 2015 and still appreciate like what it holds just nostalgically for them. But I also think of, relating to the shoe part of the thing that you mentioned as well, something that I know that you were working on when I left Boston, but now is your full-time gig, right? I know you as a developer, obviously, and you take a really visual approach to what you do, and but you made this like full-time switch over for to be the co-founder and head of tech at Soul Retriever. And could you give us a little like lowdown on what Soul Retriever is? And I know, yeah, you're involved with it.
Yeah, so Soul Retriever kind of came out as like a side project I was working on. It was not even a full time gig. The other guys like they were kind of working on other projects too, but I think they saw a lot of potential in it, and I came on to like help develop the project for a little bit and just kind of did it for free initially because I thought like this is really cool. I would hate to see it fail. And they were kind of struggling a little bit with like managing a developer. So like I wasn't even like working. I was just kind of helping manage and like making sure that the stuff got executed. And then like started working a little bit more. And they offered to bring me on as a co-founder. And I was able to do that. And it was successful enough where I was able to like leave my other great full-time job. But like I was very excited about taking out something more flexible and like being able to really sink into this project. So Soul Retriever is we've gone through a bunch of different phases, but when it started, we tracked all the different raffles and sneaker releases for limited edition Yeezys and Jordans and Nikes and stuff like that. So a lot of that information is sort of exists in a gray area or isn't necessarily public or is just kind of like all over the internet. And so we aggregated all of it on our website. And we were like kind of the main source, especially for raffles. And more things moved to raffles as sneakers became more popular and like sneaker bots became more prevalent. A lot of companies started moving to raffles to make it a little more fair for everyone. And so like this is not a raffle. I want to like clarify for our listeners, like this isn't a raffle where you get something for free. You get the opportunity to purchase the shoe.
Right.
So it's like making it more fair to buy the shoe, but you're not getting the shoe for free.
Yeah, and for reference, and this, I hope this doesn't make us sound too old, but on the retail side of this, right? Like this is we're talking about the digital interface of somebody being able to have the opportunity to purchase. It's not a first come first serve because back in the day, I'm sure as bots were becoming more popular, something that I know you and I bonded over was we would have multiple browsers open on multiple devices for the opportunity to purchase a shoe that we wanted. Whether that was like first time NMDs came out for Adidas, that was like the cheapest way that you could get Boost in a shoe at the time for like $120. And I remember that was like my entry point. But then there's obviously like the big ticket items, the collabs with with celebrities and athletes, and the retail counterpart of that was like Bodega in Boston, a great place where like they're going to bring in some stuff that they're going to sell in person and some stuff they're going to keep online. I remember going, lining up, and I know what my size is, right? I'm like usually in that sample size realm. and a lot of people are, but it's also in the size curve very popular, so it resells well. So a lot of folks would go find a way to get access to it, like pass the shoes out the back, pay a little bit more than I would retail, and they would resell it for twice the price. So I remember being second in line for a shoe launch and only to find out they didn't have anything between a 9 and a 10. And I was like, how's that?
Unfortunately, not uncommon.
Right.
I think they've like cleaned it up a little bit more since that era, but there's a lot of that that goes on now. They do like it's a little bit more. Now they'll like send friends and family invoices and stuff like that early, so like it's a little bit more like people are still paying for it and stuff like that, but like they're kind of like rewarding the consistent consumer with like early access. Like a lot of people like aren't literally friends. They're not literally family, but a lot of them are like the bigger spenders at the store will get kind of early access to stuff. And like for that, I feel like that's kind of fair.
Yeah. But the role that I see Soul Retriever playing is right, like an aggregator for sure, and a curator of those raffles, like you mentioned, and where to get them. Because in the realm of getting that one particular shoe, it might be a raffle on Essence, a raffle at Bodega, and a raffle on, let's say, Adidas for that particular shoe, and being able to say, like, these are the ways that you get in and enter it now. So it's kind of democratizing the experience in some regard, right? People access there.
But that was kind of like our slogan for a long time was like democratizing like sneaker access because like we don't like support any sort of botting. Like we have we have a mobile app where we like track restocks and stuff like that, but like there's no like auto like checkout where it fills in your credit card or like goes any faster than like there's a few shortcuts, but like it's stuff that's accessible to everyone. It just like makes it a little bit easier, like puts it in the palm of your hand, but like it's not doing as much as like the bots out there. That was like a big sticking point. Like we wanted to stay like very much like out of the gray area of sneaker botting, and like make sure it was like fully above board with like everything we did. It's like a lot of stuff, especially in the sneaker world, it really isn't like kind of exists in the shadows. Like a lot of brands kind of know about it, and you know, it takes a lot of resources to do anything about it, and it's such like a small fraction of like although it has a big impact, it's like such a small fraction of like the actual buyer. And for these like bigger ticket items too, like they're making so few of them that like it generates the hype, it sells out, and like that's fine because like at the end of the day, they're making their bread and butter off of like the Nike Pegasus and like the Panda Dunk, not the shoe that has 500 pairs.
Totally. Because they have to maintain some level of exclusivity in order to like keep the hype around it, right? So
Right.
yeah. Yeah. And when I think about some of like the aggregation and curation that you were doing there is right, there's these articles that you were producing that are, tied to you on the platform, just kind of showing off. I'm just seeing like they do overlap with something in the running industry, like the Puma Say Sky collab, right? Just showing people more information in an article sense and where to get that particular, but then also in the realm of like some sports style stuff, like Solomon collab for a lifestyle shoe, or the Kyrie Irving Anta, the latest edition of it, right? So it spans beyond a singular vertical, but it's kind of generically in this realm of like hype, which is really cool to see how things developed in the direction of what running supply now is, which we're going to get to. But I think like even before we get to that, there's two articles that stand out to me from Business Fashion that specifically call you out by name. And I feel like it was a launch pad for the platform that you're building, and just kind of harking back to all the work you've done as a curator to get to this point and be a credible source. Like the big fashion opportunity for running was the first one that I saw, and then Hoka's move into fashion as well. And I just wanted to kind of pause if there's any notes you have about kind of contributing to those articles. Is that something that you felt like, they reached out to you, you reached out to them? Was it kind of a mutually beneficial situation?
For sure. Yeah. So the author Lee, he's great. He came from the side. I think he used to work at Complex. And like at some point in time, like was hired by Business of Fashion. And I think it was a good move for him. It's like he really wanted to like dive a little bit deeper into like some of the articles he was writing, and like even great writers like at places like GQ like still have to kind of do their like bread and butter merchandising pieces and stuff like that, where like they aren't super exciting, but like you kind of put him out there. And he was excited to be able to like work on this like bigger piece because he kind of felt this momentum in the running space and like wanted to capture a little bit more that's what's already out there. And he reached out to me after he found running supply. Like he found my Substack and the site and was like, hey, like, would you be open to talking to me about this? And like we talked for like an hour and a half. Just like kind of, you know, sh- uh sharing memories and like history of like running stuff. And he was great. And he hit me up as well for the Hoka one, like kind of last minute, on a Friday afternoon. I was like, hey, yeah, I can hop on the phone like this evening. He didn't give me any heads up like what it was about because it was a secret at the time. He was just like, hey, can you give me your opinion on like Hoka collabs? Like there's some big news coming out in the future. And I was like, okay, cool. Um, I was like, should I buy Hoka stock? No, I didn't do that. But it was fun talking to him again. And the piece came out a couple weeks later and I was like, oh, this is what it was for. Uh, it was great because like I got some people to reach out to me on LinkedIn as a result, especially the uh the initial one. I got into like PR lists for media. I had some brands reach out to me, and then I had some like new founders of running brands reach out just like get some advice on like what I thought about the base and like about their particular line and like if there were other people they should talk to or like other brands they should look at and just like feeling out for like weaknesses or any gaps. And like for a lot of those people, I'm probably like one of dozens of people they talk to. Um, but it was cool to like get that opportunity and like start, you know, um, kind of contributing to the space a little bit more beyond just like aggregating information and like sharing my opinion, but like, helping like influence future brands.
Yeah, it feels like this is all the foundation for kind of like a consulting relationship that right? The people are valuing you having your ear to the ground, and uh, a big part of that's just cool to know that that was born out of you just putting yourself out there to create running supply. And I guess to kind of start super broad, like how would you describe the platform of running supply?
Yeah, so the site initially started just like I felt like experimenting with some new like web tech, and I'm a software designer and developer first and foremost, and I kind of been thinking about like doing there are a few sites like this that are like curated collections of just like whatever products. Like a lot of the times like they're for you know developer like desk setups or just like cool clothes or whatever. So like I named it Running Supply actually after the original supply, which was like stylized as SVPPLY. That was started by, I hope Ben doesn't listen to this, Ben Pyrat. I don't know how to say his last name, but like he was a guy I followed on Twitter in the early days of like my software designing. And he founded that and then eventually sold it and then started up a similar one. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I would love to build something that big, but like let's start smaller and like I'll just curate this list to start and then maybe eventually people can contribute. I don't know if I have the chops to do that. He had like funding and stuff like that, but I wanted to make this at least just for myself. And it's really just like an archive of like what I think to be some of the best design stuff in the running space, or like running adjacent, like stuff that you definitely can run in. Um, and then I started the Substack um, because I was like working on some like blog posts and like starting to do roundups of stuff that was coming out. And initially, I was like a couple years ago, I thought about doing sort of a Substack on this and didn't feel like it was necessary. I was just like, oh, there's Runner's Highest and they do that. And then I saw some like Instagrams pop up that, you know, uh, I didn't like they kind of like started very recently. And I feel like they don't necessarily I feel like they just kind of, they don't curate a lot of the news that comes out of them, I feel like, and just kind of like will publish anything and it seemed like they're a little bit for hire. And I wanted to make something that was like a little bit more in depth, similar to Runner's High. So like shout out Chris, like he did a great job with that. And I was like, hey, there's actually room for everyone in this space, and there's plenty of bread to go around. And like, I'll do this for a little bit, and if it doesn't have any traction, whatever. And like it's been that pretty warmly and been a fun project for me. And so like at the very least, like I have a history of like kind of all the things I've written on. I'm glad I still have my old Tumblr, for instance, like of of all the old stuff I collected. I was like, I look back on it and there's some like, kind of like corny inspirational quotes on there, but like a lot of the gear I put on there, I'm like, that stuff still bangs. I'm like, that stuff's still cool. And I wish I bought it back then, but I didn't have any money.
I know I saw you shared today, right? The picture of Centrowitz in the Jordan split singlet, the elephant print, and then you reference, right, the spikes that it was based off of, which were, a relic that people, even if they saw Centrowitz and were able to put the two and two together of the elephant print side of things, what they're referencing, they might not understand the original, like color story that was being told. So I feel like that Substack, that Tumblr is probably a gold mine. But it's interesting, right? Because I definitely want to touch on like the different elements of what running supply is, but something that you mentioned, right, where without kind of naming names of who's not doing it
I
well.
think they're like all still doing a pretty good job, but like it's just like a post for everything. And I think like that format works really well for Instagram, but I think it's like it lacks depth. And I think a lot of it's like feels like a little bit of an echo chamber where it's like everyone's kind of posting the same stuff, which is why I almost didn't start this to begin with. Cause like I don't want to feel like I'm just echoing whatever is on Runner's Highest. Or I was like, I actually have different opinions and like I can put out stuff more like weekly as opposed to like, on a periodically. Cause I find myself craving, I'm like, when is this going to come out again? Or like reading whatever came out and I'm like, oh, I already like knew about all these things. I'm like, there's nothing new here. And I'm like constantly hungry for more. And so I was like, what if I just like did this myself?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of where I ended up. Like no slight to the other like like other all the other Instagram accounts are crushing it. Like there's some that are great. I just like don't want to. It didn't want mine to become just like posting kind of like the kind of like this reposting stuff from like big brands. Just like reposting like whatever comes out from Satisfy or whatever comes out from Soar, Bandit, whatever. Just like taking their marketing images, downloading them, and reposting them. I wanted like a
Right. If you overlay it or something, right? Yeah. It seems like the authenticity is something for sure that stands out to you and like the that sets it apart, but then also the positioning. And right, it definitely seems like you view the role of a curator and the role of an aggregator to be like essential for kind of bringing these things to light and in a digestible way, in a visually appealing way. But something that I think about is in the way that you position to your audience, right? In the various platforms you use, is it more of a bet that you know exactly who that person is today and that you will, I don't know, you'll have a larger audience as more people are more invested in this intersection of fashion running? Or is it more so the brands that you are featuring providing the lift because of what they're doing, right? So is it more, I guess a better way to ask the question is, do you think is it the content itself that will allow the platform to grow? Or is it more a symbiotic relationship with what the brands are doing? And if it's interesting, that allows people to find you and help grow your platform. What do you think is true?
I mean, I'm definitely somewhat reliant on like brands doing exciting things because like it would be awfully tough if my Substack every week was just like, man, all this stuff coming out is like pretty lackluster. And
Mhm.
like I don't want it to be like negative all the time. And like I try to focus on like highlighting the stuff that I like and like occasionally being critical, but like mostly just like highlighting the better things because there's plenty of garbage out there as well. Um,
Totally.
like the Zara putting out like whatever running knockoff using the cheapest labor possible kind of stuff. And like I can only talk. I talked about it one time, and I'm like, I don't want to keep giving them headlines, and so like I'm done here. So like I'd rather focus on like the cool stuff that's happening. I think it's cool for whatever reason. In some of it, like I'm coming from a consumer side, so like some of it might not even be cool, or like people that are industry side might be like, man, like this is interesting that this is capturing so much attention because like, for instance, like the Satisfy shoe, like I talked to my few of my friends and they're like, yeah, it's not like that really exciting. They're doing a good job of storytelling, but like the shoe itself, like isn't that impressive. And like I've heard similar things about like other shoes coming out and like, it's always impressive to put out a shoe in general, but they more mean like the technology going in there isn't groundbreaking. Like, of course, how you pull it together really matters. Um, very few companies at this point, I feel like have like a huge technological advantage if like kind of everything's out there. We haven't had like a Vaporfly situation in a minute. Um, that was like such a shift in the industry where like everyone was behind. So now it's a pretty level playing field. And it's like I think the gripes that some people will have be like, they price this really, really high, given like I know what goes into like putting this thing together. And like as a consumer, I don't know most of that sort of stuff. Like I do now a little bit, but um that's always interesting for me to hear. But like I'm purely coming from the consumer side. I'm like, oh, this design looks interesting. The storytelling was cool. The product came together the cool way. And I like, and they did a good job like selling that it is cool. And like that's kind of what I'm going off of. It's like a lot of it's just like very like driven by my own taste and driven a little bit by like what I'm getting exposed to online because like I'm unfortunately chronically online and like that it's very hard to resist the influence of that when you're like trying to figure out what's interesting. Like I think the Tracksmith shoe, for instance, like wasn't super in your face online. And I feel like that's going to have like a negative impact on how that's selling, unfortunately, despite it being like, pretty impressive for them to come up with a carbon plated shoe.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny because I agree with you that the entirety of the package is what the consumer is taking in, and that's the thing that they're evaluating, and it kind of relates back to your positioning of what sets you apart. You're not just saying, "This is the heel toe drop. This is the exact like foam that's in it." You are providing a little bit more of a spin on the entire experience, which does make it different than other folks who are curating, and I think that's what people respond well to. I know when you were talking about, right, the rocker, for example, you produced some stuff on it, which was all encompassing. But it's funny you mentioned the Trackman shoe because it did come out today. And today is meeting March 18th. And when I saw the teaser images for it, I I I had seen protos because I worked there. So I was interested in seeing like the minute tweaks that were going on with it. But the thing that maybe relating back to the entirety of the experience and how it's presented that kind of turned my head was this is the first time that I've ever seen Tracksmith repost the content of other people on their stories ever. And this is, back in the day, brand book wise, like they create, it's a one to many.
Yeah, they are off. That was against the rules.
Right. And if they're willing to kind of like relax this for the sake of bringing reviews to validate what they're doing, it's just an interesting shift, right? Is this something they'll continue, or is this something that was presented in this particular instance because it's a $280 shoe from a brand that has never produced a super shoe before? And maybe that was part of the strategy. But again, that is all a part of what consuming a launch is and what people have to contend with as they make these like decisions. So I think it's super interesting.
Yeah,
For sure.
I was surprised to like not see more because like for like you said with Tracksmith, like it's a very broadcast heavy. Like it's not kind of like reposting stuff. It's like very all like original content. And like I was surprised to not see like some sort of like mini feature like video and stuff like that. Like in my last Substack, I talked about like kind of like missing that like heritage style glorification of like the grind or whatever, like around whatever stuff's coming out. And like a lot of people maybe got sick of that over time, but like I think it's still Tracksmith's kind of bread and butter and like it's still cool. And when they put together a video, it's like still looks really good. Like the production quality on all this stuff is so good. And I missed having that for the shoe where I was like, oh, there's just like one shot, like one product shot for this thing. And I wasn't seeing like the as much of production around it. So I was interested to see if like maybe more comes out of that closer to Boston. Like that's what I'm hoping for. Because like I miss one of my favorite commercials done by Tracksmith was was like the film short for the Olympic trials. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like they put that out and then they did the amateur support program for it. And like that was like probably the best, I don't know, few quarters that I'd ever seen from like a running company for a challenger running brand, I should say.
Home run.
Yeah, like that, like they just like lined up like hit after hit for that period of time, and I was like, wow, like everything was like Tracksmith's super cool, like everything's firing all cylinders, like all the products really good, and like it's felt like a little bit quieter. Not that anything's bad. It's just like been like a little bit less high energy. I'd say over like the last, I don't know, year and a half or so. And like that's part of that's probably because of there's so many other high energy challenger brands that it's really hard to get at people's attention.
And to do it cheaply too.
It was very expensive to do all that stuff as well. Like that, I'm sure that feature film was expensive to shoot. It did look sick though.
Were you there for that commercial shoot? Like the one when we shot, right? I was an extra. Yeah. You know, like the singular shot around. I remember because you and I had the same experience where they were filming this one continuous shot, right? That started, it was a 400-meter repeat. And then as the camera panned around the track to follow like the heroes of it, they featured these vignettes of people competing in different things. So it would be somebody high jumping, somebody do hurdles, somebody, right, like throwing a discus or a jab. And they had to time everything perfectly to get this in one continuous shot, no edit. But the day before, they wanted to protect the talent, right, that was coming in, who were going to be like the real people on camera. And I remember being there to help out, and I was just in like a cotton tee, a pair of like corduroy shorts, and a beat pair of Cliftons. And I remember them pointing at a few of us, and they're like, "We need you to stand in to do the 400."
Go run some 400s. Yeah.
And I remember being like, "Well, what's the pace? Like, what do you need?" And they said 60, and I was like, "Dude, ain't no way, right?" Like, I had to furiously negotiate to only do 200 meters at a time because I'm going to be fighting for my life on the back end. The people who ended up being in the video were very capable of doing that. But yeah, that was a funny time with this. But to your point though, about like thinking about the rollout of this, right? We saw day one was today. It was sharing like the beauty images, the blurry photography that I know you have commentary on as well in the industry. But I'm super curious about, right, the insole of that removable insole of that shoe has like a poem written on the inside. I'm picturing them maybe like in a different realm or reality, somebody reading that as a voiceover for some beautiful training montage, right? Like I'm sure it maybe that's gonna come out tomorrow on, March 19th or March 20th or on Sunday during like the long run. But to see the beauty shot be the first moment does feel like I mean, I don't necessarily want to say a miss, but it does feel like something that could have been done a little bit more. I know I can go on with you about this like all day. Just
Yeah, it's like I can talk about this. I could talk about this forever, but like it's just like a lot. I know a lot of work went into it. Like it's very impressive to put out a shoe. Like it's not cheap. Like you could put out like a cheap shoe or whatever, like a budget thing. Obviously, Trax is never going to do that. They have very high standard. Like I'm sure I know a ton of testing went into this. I know like a bunch of my friends ran the trials in it. Like they thought it was great, and like they ran in it over other shoes that they easily could have run, and they were not required to wear it. And I was just like a little it it was a little bit of a bummer seeing like it just like not get as hyped up as I would have liked to be. And like not that Trax was necessarily like a huge hype brand, but like I feel like after all that was after all that was like invested behind it, I feel like it wasn't very celebrated at the finish. And that felt like a little disappointing to me. Like I was a little bummed because I'm like, I know so much work went into this, and then it just like felt like it was like a tired finish, which doesn't make a lot of sense for like a high performance shoe. I'm like, we should have like a big bang sort of like thing coming, and it should be tied together. Like if there were something coming out in the future, close to the marathon, like maybe wait to release the shoe. I don't know. I don't know. Again, this is me as a consumer. Like I know nothing behind the scenes here. Like I have no experience producing shoes. Like I know kind of like how release cycles work. And so like this is where I'm coming from.
perception is reality though with this stuff, right? So like if this is your opinion that you have, right? So many other people probably sharing that with you. So it is really like I don't know, it hits for sure. And but to think about, right, all of the elements of what you produce with running supply, right? I know of the kind of storefront side of things, right? Like having the links out, kind of the articles of these hyped items that are kind of hard to find. They're beautifully designed, like you mentioned. The store finder, the running brand in depth, and the Substack itself. Those are kind of the pillars that I see.
Mhm.
Uh, am I missing anything?
I think like I have like a couple of those resources, so, like the brand index. I have a store list as well that's like mostly an aggregate, and then I had the store finder separately because I was like, oh yeah, I mostly wanted to play around with like creating a map maker and like figuring out a way to like make a nice experience for like browsing kind of where what stores were near you that were like selling these challenger things. So I do think, in the US, more of them are popping up. Like for a while, it was pretty limited given how many large cities we have compared to like Europe. Like Europe had so many more of them. Like even England has so many more of them. And I was like, man, like why are we lacking so many of these? And like I really try to like aggregate all those like kind of next gen running stores. Like no slight to the like traditional running stores, like especially running stores that sell kind of the bread and butter stuff. Like I think those are super important. That's where I got all of my shoes. But these kind of like design conscious, like more lifestyle oriented running stores that are a little more appealing to me now. That like running isn't my entire identity, and like I'm a little more curious to go after like what's at like the forefront of running, or like what's you know adjacent to running. And so like I wanted to put that together for the store finder and the store list. The brand index is like I'm putting together like a better version of that. Like I just have all those listed out and putting together one that's more of a map of like similar brands, like the brand voice. Like if you're looking for like a certain vibe, like helping you find brands that are within that. Um, it's like trying to do that a little bit. And it's like that's more of like an exposure thing. Like, hey, a lot of people on Reddit, like I moderate the subreddit r/running fashion. And like a lot of people would frequently ask, like, hey, like, are there brands besides Tracksmith that are kind of like Tracksmith? And I'm like, boy, can I tell you, they're about 25. Like, let me tell you about like every single challenger running it, because that's namely what they mean. They don't literally mean like give me something with a collared shirt. They're more like what's out there besides like Tracksmith and then like Bandit and Nike and Brooks. And there's a ton of new brands popping up. So like I wanted to like keep a place for people to go reference that. The archive uh is more of like, or like the main page is more of just like an archive, glorified mood board. And I usually like leave a little bit of commentary on there of like where you can get stuff. Like that is some of that's affiliated. I don't really make any money off of that. Like I do it just in case. Um, but that was more to like experiment with SEO actually, like see I could rank for things and just like see what showed up. Mostly uh it's stuff ranked pretty well. Like I tried to make the page as fast as possible while still being like appealing and like have some animations. Um, all the way back to like that goes back to like my main job, kind of, because I would kind of experiment with like how I could change those pages because it's lower risk than changing a page for work. Because the pages for work get like tons of traffic. These pages maybe get like hundreds of hits at that, like maybe thousands at best. So like for like the Satisfy launch, I ranked like page one, like number two instantly. And I was like, oh man. And I got like a ton of traffic for that. It was just like, it was a very lightweight page. And like my takeaway from that was like, a lot of this content doesn't really matter. Like what you're writing about it doesn't really matter. If people's like intent is to find out like where to buy something or like when it's coming out. Cause they're like, they don't care what the review is. They're just like, I'm interested in this product. It looks cool. I want to buy it. Versus like needing a full, right. Like versus needing the full review of something you get on like, run repeat or whatever, which like is very valuable if you're like trying to figure out the best running shoe. But for these types of items, it's more like I'm just trying to get it. And like any sort of like color commentary ad is like, because I want to. And now I also have an archive of like stuff that I like where like I can come back to it as well. And I know like some friends at like brands have used it as like inspo boards or like mood boarding for work. They're like, oh yeah, like look at this one product. It'd be cool if we like incorporate like some of these aspects. That was cool to hear. So like that's like the website side, and then the Substack was making sure like I can like get more consistent content. And I was like, yeah, I originally started it just to drive traffic to the main site, and then I realized the Substack is much bigger than the main site, and so now it's kind of the inverse, where like I try to use the running supply archive site to kind of drive more traffic to my Substack. And like not all of this is like traffic driven necessarily, but I think a lot of people just like haven't heard of my Substack, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I love this. Like, I wish I'd heard about it earlier." I hate like reposting it, and I'm bad at like promoting stuff online for myself. Um, it feels bad, like to me, and I kind of got to get over that. But yeah, so like that's kind of like the four branches of that.
Yeah. It's so cool to think about how this is kind of just a massive sandbox for you to test theories and kind of skate where the puck's going in that regard. And it does kind of build out even more facets of what kind of the consulting arm of what you can do for brands and agencies just from being able to test things out and to reach these conclusions with like hard evidence is super cool. I know the right, like I was most familiar with the archive side of things first, right? Since that was the first thing. And then I love the idea of I remember bouncing around and seeing right like the running brand index and kind of discovering the like archetypes that you create for these things and just digestible ways for people to understand before they click through and go to the about page and go to the social and then go to the copy on each of the product pages, them to understand kind of what the aesthetic and execution of those things are. And I love the store finder just because the to your exact point, if you were to exist in a vacuum, you may be aware of national chains, right? In the East Coast, we know, or Northeast, we know Marathon Sports. Fleet Feet is a national chain that just like keeps growing and growing and growing. You might know like the next step in that direction might be outside of local running stores that are like really beloved to us, but you might know of like the Loop and Renegade and those kinds of
Yeah, like I mean, I honestly think if you went to LA and you search for running store, you're not gonna find LSD running, and you're not gonna find Renegade like pop up first. Like you're gonna find like much bigger stores that are more popular that the average person goes to. And like I think you know, I don't think those stores are better than the average person. I think plenty of the average people like would love going to those stores and be like, "Oh, cool, these are different than the average running store, and like I enjoy going here." Like you still probably want to go to your Fleet Feet or whatever to get like a shoe fitting and like get some like expert opinion and stuff. But like if you want to see some different products or just like go talk to Victor, like he's super friendly. About cool running designs or like running history. Like he's down to chat, and like those are they're great like organizing spaces as well, and they like do a lot of like community stuff, like organizing runs. And I wish more of those kind of like they're flirting with like the idea of being kind of like a third space for like a little more dedicated to running. It's like not a not a true third space like a bar or a library, I guess, but like a third space where like you can go and hang out and you can buy running stuff. They don't honestly care if you do. Like they are running a business, but I think that's not their primary goal is like they do it because they want it. Which is cool, and like it's a luxury to be able to do. It's awesome to be able to do that.
yeah, you have like the slow burn aspect of focusing on community first and community spaces and instead of just being able to push product with X% off. And just yeah, I love the idea that all of these, let's say challenger stores are taking on their design focus like you mentioned. Well, yeah,
I've been like referring to them as third wave running stores, and like maybe maybe they're even fourth, like a more decent to fourth wave running stores, like fourth wave coffee shops being like the micro coffee shops, not the not the blue bottles, but like the like for me locally, like Little Wolf Coffee or like 1369, like that sort of stuff. I'm trying to think of more nationally popular ones, but like if it's nationally popular, like, it's more of like that old third wave. And I think these are like very, very localized sort of. They're like famous locally, and like some of them get national attention, like the Loop, like Mill City, honestly. Um, or like they're nationally known, but like it's a local store and it's like loved by the community. And I think that's part of the part of the appeal too, of them nationally is like that they're so like I know that people love Mill City locally, but like I also love Mill City because I love how much they are loved.
right. Flapjack Friday at Mill City is like the most heavily attended random Friday morning event that I've ever seen at a running shop that is hyper local to an area. But yeah, yeah. When I think of this Substack though, and I think of your roundups, just kind of in the same way that these kind of challenger stores or third wave running stores are kind of turning people onto new brands, I feel like you do a lot of work just for to bring those opportunities and those things to people's faces. Like, I learned about so much stuff just by following you, obviously. Like, knowing what more about chance running and tiempos and right, like, all of these brands that might not even be in a store yet for you to touch and feel, and depending on what who you follow, you might not know what these things are. I imagine it takes a ton of effort for you to find these things. I know you joke around with being chronically online, but what does it look like for you to have these, or what does it look like to kind of put these things together and curate them on a round up basis?
It I do have like my like I'm not on my like you can see who I follow on my running supply Instagram account. Is like that's how I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Like I'm sure some other accounts that curate like this like don't follow people and have a burner or whatever. Like I don't care because like it's still a lot. You can follow as many of these brands as you want. It's still a lot of work. Like you still got to like put in the views, unfortunately. Like it's a lot of time just like flipping through stuff, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's probably my least favorite part of it is like I kind of have to like do my rounds where, much like you go and like you clear your inbox, like I gotta go through and like look through all my stuff. I am on some press lists now, which like is really helpful because that I don't need to seek stuff out and I know when it's coming ahead of time and I can plan a little bit more. Like that is immensely helpful. And like that's how the more like legit places do it. Um, like the bigger, like I'm sure Chris from my brother's house, like he's aware of a lot of stuff coming out like well ahead of time. Sure. Like I think he does a great job. Like a lot of the other like major ones, Greenie, like GRNIE, it's like a more of like an outdoor um outerwear, like gore kind of stuff. Like they're getting this stuff like way ahead of time. And it's like I'm kind of like getting it as I get peaks of it. And occasionally these like press releases, which is great. It's like I'm on press for like Satisfy and Soar and like they've been and on and they've been like all super helpful. Beha as well. It's like that's great because like I can plan a little bit more because like a lot of it turns into a mad rush kind of Friday, Saturday, Sunday to like get everything together for the Substack. And like I still have to write up like my own commentary and like feelings on it because like that's I want to be a little bit more than just like saying like this thing is dropping on this day, because like that anyone can do and like yes, it's helpful but like it's a lot more replaceable and like is not the fun part. Like the fun part is being able to be like this is cool or like I don't like the way they did this. And having a little bit more of a conversation. And like that's one of my favorite parts about Reddit. Like I get a lot more like engagement and discussion on there about certain stuff. A lot of haters. People love hating on the internet, especially on Reddit where like their name's not as attached. On Reddit, I tend to be a little less opinionated because like I moderate it. So like I can't, I'm not like constantly spamming my like Substack. Like plenty of the people on there, there's like 10,000 people on there. I do not have 10,000 Substack subscribers. Like plenty of people don't even know that I have one. And like, I'm trying to keep it that way. Um, but yeah, like it's like hours, like kind of going through stuff on the internet and like, even just like finding stuff also via like design, sites, like, design inspiration sites. We'll sometimes pick these up because like a lot of the stores will have like a little bit more experimental designs. Like that's how I kind of came across, like even just like outside of the running realm, how I came across like which is like a outdoor brand, like just like staying plugged into like other areas beyond just running. Because like I think if you're too hyper focused on running, you're gonna miss some like the amazing opportunities outside of that sphere, like some of the cool stuff going outside of that sphere. I think
I'm just gonna ask you that because like I see it is an echo chamber. If you want to stay in running, you will be surrounded by maybe the newest version of whatever shoe that's come out, which is going to be covered in legacy media for you to consume, or you're going to see maybe like the Y3 execution of like the Adios, right? Like of an Adidas shoe, and that might be the extent that you understand it or get to consume it. But the thing that I also think of is the the design element of what you're doing converges with high fashion as well, in addition to like retail spaces. So I think of right, Hermanos Kimori is like beloved friends in that regard. And I remember seeing their execution of a store they did in Mexico City where they're based, where they had wood chips all over the floor, and even some of the campaigns they'd done. kind of built these retro futurist environments just to shoot a singular campaign with New Era and their apparel. So I it's really cool to note that the influences of yours exist on the peripheries as well, and that's what keeps, like, your head on the swivel because that's probably I mean, that's that's skating in front of the puck instead of, like, to the puck in that regard, right? You're like, "I know they're gonna pass it over here," and that's why I think Running Supply does such a good job with, like, bringing these curated takes to people and not as reactionary as other things. But I'm curious though, you said that some of these challenger brands or upstarts are reaching out to you, just, for conversations or advice or whatever. What does it look like for someone to reach out? And you don't have to, like, name specific examples, but for you to then kind of take the extra step and say, let's talk about, or I'm going to include this in a roundup, or I'm going to really deep dive into this. What does it look like if somebody reaches out?
Yeah, so, like, I'll get, like, you know, depending on who it is, like, bigger brands, like, usually just email me, and, like, it's usually not someone from I think, like, I got an email from On, and I was like, "I is this actually from On?" It was from their PR team, which, like, I should have known. I don't handle that kinda side on Soul Retriever that much, and so I was, like, surprised to see an email from, like, a non-On domain and be like there's so many spam emails that go out now that are, like, official New Balance collaboration or something like that. Like, we get a dozen of those. Like, I'm used to just, like, immediately archiving or deleting them. But that one was actually legit, and I was like, "Oh, cool." And so, like, they, like, sent me a few things, and they were just like, "Hey, thanks for covering us. We're gonna put you on the press list." Um, and, like, that was great, and, like, I, you know, didn't need the stuff, didn't ask for it, and, like, the press list was honestly the most valuable because that saves me so much time versus needing to, like, comb through everything that's getting put out or, like, constantly check, websites and stuff like that. So, like, that was great. Like, that was the biggest gift, and it doesn't cost them anything. I'm, like, kinda careful, I'm not necessarily careful with, like, taking stuff, but I'm careful with, like, if I get sent stuff, like, I only will share it in the Substack if I think it's, like, really share worthy. I might cover it regardless, but, like, I might not necessarily put, like, my opinion on there, just because, like, I don't want it to feel like I'm, like, pushing product. Like, I don't have any affiliate deals with any of these places. Like, I don't get paid by any of them. I wanna be, like, more of a third party, and, like, if I get stuff early to try, great, and I can give an opinion on it. Um, that's, like, a little bit more informed versus, for plenty of stuff, I'm just like, "Hey, these look cool." And then someone will chime in and be like, "Yeah, I got these, and they're terrible." Or like, "Oh, yeah, like, actually, like, you said, like, this might be a problem, and it's actually not. Like, they're super durable." And I was like, "Oh, great. Well, I didn't know that because I haven't tried them." And you can't possibly, try everything, obviously. But, like, I do my best to, like, do some due diligence, and I think it's helpful having Reddit as a resource too, where, like, I can be like, "Yeah, like, a lot of people love X product." So, like, a lot of it's, like, get the official email channels. Occasionally, it's DMs. On Instagram, that's a little less common. Like, my Instagram account's not that big compared to the Substack, I would say. But I've gotten a few DMs from people, and they're like, "Hey, like, would love to connect with you and just, like, get your opinion." On Reddit, I got, like, a mod mail thing where, like, guy wanted to run a survey. And, like, because he was an active member, I was like, "Cool, yep, like, happy to let you do that." Normally, I try to normally we filter that sort of stuff out. But it was like a active, like, trail runner, so that was cool. Um, but yeah, like, sometimes even just, like, word of mouth. Like, I'll get a text from a friend that's like, "Hey, someone reached out and they were, like, interested, see if you get your take," and then we'll do, like, FaceTime, and, like, that's kind of it. Yeah, I've talked to, like, a number of, like, big and small brands, and, like, I don't charge for any of this. It's just, like, right now, like, I'm happy to give people my opinion. And I, like, just, like, love connecting with a lot of these people. Talked recently to the folks at, Receipts, which is, like, a new it's a, husband and wife, like, collab studio. Like, they're working together on this, like, little startup, which is super cool. Not that little, like, actually, like, little for now. But they're doing kind of like a, uh, training as, like, currency sort of thing where you get perks and benefits and, like, early access to products and stuff like that by logging your work as, which, like, a few people have tried before, but, like, I thought their design was really cool, and, like, I was just, like, happy to chat with them.
Cool. That's great, and I feel like the relationship you have to these brands kind of sits between media and kind of in an influence perspective as well, right? Like, it's not in the sense of, like, you doing Get Ready With Me's with, like, particular, output, but the influence that you contain through the channels that you've built, where it's kind of uh, there's personality behind it, and editorial curation, which to me skews like the influence side, but it is still objectively media facing as well. Because I feel like we're just in this really blended space right now, where like for another person that I know we both know and love, like Tommy Runs, right? Is another person I think of who sits in the blended space of media and the blended space of influence because of just relationships that he has to brands. And you just want to know, like, in operating in this kind of amorphous space, or maybe just this amorphous time, do you have any opinions about like the roles staying siloed, or if this kind of blended space will continue? What kind of things do you think will take place in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're in an influencer bubble, and I think like it happens at this point in time to be like the most cost effective way of reaching people. And in the same way that we're seeing, the trend on Google, where like a lot more of the results are getting pulled from user generated content. Like this is the same like authentic user generated content, except like not all of it's authentic. Like in the sense of some of the influencers, like they're getting paid to push stuff. And I'm not for this, and like don't plan to be. I think like I lose like the whole cool factor of it, and like I don't think this will ever be my full time job. Like unless I'm doing consulting, like then that's fine. But I don't see this ever becoming my full time job. Then it becomes work. Right now it's play, which is great, and I'd love to keep it that way. Um, Recently, like Blackbird Spy Plane talked about kind of like their policy. Like they don't do any affiliate links. They take no gifts. They exclusively purchase all the products if they get them at all. Um, I'm sure they occasionally get stuff from like friends where they're like friends with the person that made the brand, but like they would have probably bought it anyway, and they don't like necessarily even talk about it. They mostly just like interviews with uh you know fashion founders, I guess, or like designers and stuff like that. Like I really respect like with how pure they're able to keep their thing. I probably won't be like that because I would love to cover my hosting costs for running supply, and like if I get free running shoes and free gear, that's dope. I'd love to be able to give more of an opinion on that because there is a performance angle as opposed to like this is my style or whatever. It's like if they're for Blackbird Spy Plane, like they're big fans of Evan Kenori, and like I don't, you either like Evan Kenori or you don't. It's not as much of like oh, this thing like causes blisters on your feet when you run 40 miles. So like there's a little bit more of like a testing angle where you can be pretty objective about certain things versus being like, this is my style or not, or like this is cool or not. Um, yeah. And like I'm already opinionated about things, and like I'm not being given them. It's just like this is my take on stuff. It's like I do want to stay, at least for me, like that's how I feel. And so for the space in general, I think I think we're going to still see it be super blended until there is a more cost effective way for brands to reach people. And then influencers will die out.
That it definitely like
That's a pessimistic view, but
totally. I feel like that knowing your kind of stance on the payment aspect being like a trigger for definition is definitely interesting for me, right? And I can definitely like agree with that of when somebody's being paid to post, right? That definitely changed the nature of the relationship to their audience for sure. And there is that purity of kind of staying more so in media by taking a more objective opinion and having a different relationship to brand and product as a result. So I totally get it. And I've been, some people DM me often when things go awry in the influencer world because I remember expressing an opinion in 2023 that I was like, there's going to be a bubble that's going to pop with influencing in like 2025, 2026, because my prediction, and maybe I'll cut this out because this probably won't reflect. This could be like a little bit of a hot take, but uh, my prediction is that more brands are going to work with the same people, because of their perceived influence based on follower count and engagement, or the perception of it. So imagine right now you have a large swath of people you could work with who are, let's say, different degrees of credible in space, in the niche. And there could be an evolution where there are fewer people that are nominated and elected as like the knowers and sayers. And when on Friday, somebody's telling you that the Hyperion Max is the best shoe they've ever run it, and on Monday, they're telling you that the Pegasus Turbo is the best shoe they've ever run it, the best shoe ever created, their impact dissolves. And the price to work with those people, despite, I think, a crash that they'll kind of bring about to their own world, the price of working with them is going to be so high that people will just walk away from it, from a brand.
I think in some degree, like eventually people get too costly. I think influencers have it great right now, where like they can charge, they're not operating like normal businesses. Like a lot of people don't have any sort of background in business. If they don't, and if like they don't have like a manager or something like that, like a lot of them haven't had like normal jobs, like not to like flame the Gen Z people. They had it very tough with like COVID and whatnot. And like online influence, if you hit like a great way for them to make money. And so like, I don't, no slight in like trying to get your bag, like you got to pay rent and stuff like that. But I do think there's much like the generations before me felt like we were entitled and like we're coming in asking for too much. I think a lot of them they're asking for what they have been getting. They've been asking for a lot and they're getting it. And I do think the hammer will come down at some point in time where people are going to like want to see real metrics and like want to see, which is very hard. Like as businesses, as there's like any sort of, retraction, we're going to see like the influencer stuff kind of get cut when they don't have metrics they can reflect on. And like at these larger companies, this is getting in the weeds a little bit, but like if you're on the marketing side of your company and they're like, okay, you spent $20,000 on influencer campaigns, like what needle did it move? And you can't point towards any like hard data. It's going to be really hard to justify you working there and justify your decision to spend $20,000 on influencers. And I think there's like kind of a general understanding right now that it sort of works, and a lot of the platforms are making it easier for those metrics, I guess. But yeah, I don't really have like any sort of direction with this beyond being like, if there aren't metrics to match it, it's not going to be a good investment when there's not a lot of money going around. Like when investment money isn't cheap and you're trying to grow, then like the stuff that can't be measured won't be bought.
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be that kind of reckoning of brand led relationships with folks with influence and performance led relationships, right? Where I think we're definitely talking about when we talk about like ROI, it's definitely performance based, like the return on investment. And I think like, right, not to walk back my opinion, but I think to soften it slightly, right? Something I do believe is the relationship to folks with influence is just going to evolve, and we don't know what that will be yet. But it's likely that, right, folks with influence will always play a role. It's just a matter of like who they are and how they reach their audience, and like the formats for doing so. That all of that was like so liquid. Yeah, it's fluid. That's the thing where I'm like, I'm curious to see what the next iteration of it is, because I think this chapter is something that's kind of under fire right now for sure. To your point as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the top thing for like I think Substack right now is like kind of hitting its not necessarily a fever pitch, but like it feels like Tumblr did in 2010 for me. Or like there's a pretty cool, like there's a good community on there. There's a lot of stuff taking off. I think we are starting to see some of the I'm gonna call it trickle down because like it's not as big of a platform. Like you're starting to see some like the LinkedIn style posting and like Twitter style posting hit like notes and stuff like that. But I think we still have the purity of like the long form post on there. But like we're also seeing, same way with like the longer form content. I even felt kind of bad doing like the sock post where I'm like, here are my favorite like socks, or like what I think is kind of what's like on my mind right now, like socks I'm liking right now. And it's like a lot of people like wanted that, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like people wanted to see roundups, like what I think like the kind of the top things are, because like that's what they come to the Substack for. Like they want to know what's happening, and like as much as I like doing the more like critical pieces that require a little bit more brain power, like these are also like what people that are reading want to do. And like I actually like putting them together. I'm like, oh yeah, like I love doing like roundup ones. They're not that hard. I can like share my opinion on like a handful of things. And like they do well, so you get like relatively good feedback. Like I was surprised that the stock post I did like got as much engagement and like created a discussion. I was like, oh cool. Like you know, people like weighed in on stuff, and I was happy to see, um, like happy to hear from like people in the audience and like other Substackers about like other runners, I should say. They're runners first and foremost, not Substackers. So, like chime in on that. And it's like, as much as I don't love, the listicles and that sort of thing, I'm like, oh, like this actually created discussions. Like if, and it's not like an inflammatory post. I wasn't aiming to create a discussion. It's just like got one, and I'm like, cool. Well, like if that's working, then like let's get more people like talking about this stuff, because like I like talking to those people about these things because they care about it. Like I love talking to people that like care about these sorts of things. I'm like a lot of this stuff I'm like writing it, to some degree for myself. So like I have this archive of things that I liked. Like I'll be happy in 10 years when I can look back at some of this stuff and be like, oh cool, yeah, that was what was popping at that point in time. Like what a blast from the past. Like even just looking at my old Tumblr, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those shoes. Like I remember those spikes. So hopefully this can serve for that as well. I know this is like departing from our topic on like affiliate, but just like thinking about like these types of posts that tend to be used for pushing product, like merchandising style posts. Like I'm trying to steer clear of those, but like I do think we're gonna keep seeing them, and like in the high end fashion space, in the streetwear space, in the menswear space, like what I'm doing in running isn't particularly unique. Like most of those other areas like already have their writers. There just like isn't someone on this niche. And I was like, oh cool. Like I feel like I can do this.
Yeah, I think the engagement that you're seeing from that, you know, aggregate post of these are the sock that I'm running in, right? And more that editorial positioning, and the what's endured is a function of like the community that you're growing on that and encouraging people to engage with you, which is the important part, right? So like all of that to me is super interesting. That I think if somebody were to maybe rush into growing an audience and then pushing a post like that, they're not going to get that response because of just the nature and the way that people have maybe interacted with them in the past. But I know as I think about, right, our discussion, I'm obviously like an avid fan of what you're doing at Run and Supply. But as you look forward to this year, are there certain brands or products that you have your eye on of like, I'm definitely staying tuned for what I'm seeing in this direction? And because I'd love to know as well. I'd love to be a little bit more engaged.
I'm really excited about currently running. Nash Howe is the guy behind that. Like he was a javelin thrower in college, and like was in track, but I've really loved, like I've talked to him a good bit about it, and I don't know, like he reached out, or like I found him or whatever, but he shared with me like all the early stuff, and just kind of sent me like a long email just like about his vision for the brand and stuff like that, and like what he's hoping to do for it. And I've been really impressed with like the whole, like just seeing the whole product line. Like I was shocked that it's like a full, it's like all the running apparel you would need. Like it's a full apparel line. It's not like he just came out with, a bunch of brands started off with just socks, and like that's fine. Like Bandit was an idea and socks, and like turned into like this whole the behemoth it is now, and like they're doing super well. And like how has the whole line? It's like so dialed in. I don't know. Luckily, he's got to be successful in other areas of his career, and like his floatingness right now. Because like I don't, it's so it would be so overwhelming to me to put this together, and so I'm really impressed, and like it looks really good. Like he's not cutting any corners on it. And like, yes, making apparel is probably like easier today than it was 20 years ago, but like it's still really cool to come together with all this. And like he's hoping to compete with, you know, the Bandits and the Tracksmiths of the world. Um, so like that's exciting and ambitious. And seeing this up, I'm like, yeah, it looks like it can. So like that's probably the thing I'm most excited about. Um, I'm very very into like I haven't I have no products from Soar. I love everything that Soar puts out. I'm just like they are at the forefront of apparel technology. Like they're experimenting with stuff. Like they're the cutting edge. Like they are the Nike is the footwear as like Soar right now is to running apparel. And I love it. Like I love that their stuff is so focused. A lot of people don't love like the super bright colors and like punchy prints and stuff like that, which like I actually think is cool that they did this and it's different. And I'm excited about like everything they're doing. I really like the sunglasses they just put out. Like I'm not gonna wear them. I'm probably not gonna buy them, but like I get cool that they put out this like 10 gram pair of sunglasses. Like they didn't need to do that, but it's awesome that they did. And like, you know, the people that wear it are gonna love it. Like it's cool seeing them like innovate on apparel technology because like that I think like has taken a backseat amidst the running boom right now. Like there's been a lot of Instagram brands that have popped up and like they're all kind of like hype and marketing and stuff like that. Um and like they're just like putting out pretty average stuff. Um and yeah, it's like Soar to me is like at the opposite end of the spectrum where like they're putting out really exciting stuff and it's like anything they make. Especially like they have like kind of their Soar Labs sort of deal, which reminds me of like the old like Nike Guy Kosu stuff where like it's you know it's not all of it's gonna hit. But again, you know, it's their experimental kind of stuff. And like, it's always their proto lab, I guess is what they call it. Like it's always interesting. Yeah. It's like they have like they have a Mac like raincoat, like a full length raincoat. Like, you're never going to run in that, but like, it's cool that they made one. It's like really interesting. So I think that and currently running like the two things that I'm really bullish on right now.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point about Store because I know they don't get a ton of shine in the US just given the distribution. They're based in the UK and they're definitely big over there. Just even
Also just like expensive. So like it's hard to buy into this sort of thing, especially if you can't try it on a store, you know, that's like you're hitting the import fees if you buy more than two things from them.
yeah, and I think of to see the validation in the UK for them in particular, right? With the athletics programs that exist there just for club running, they've really infiltrated that space. But even a microcosm, what they've done to figure out how to do really high tech, fully sublimated race singlets for in small quantities and to turn them around quick, like broke the brains of so many people at brands. Like, I mean, I remember conversations that I was a part of, just thinking about like how are they doing it, and to already iterate on something that's so good, and then to personalize and customize. It's a whole other conversation about like the positioning of that and the marketing around something like that. Or just the like you mentioned with their Cubits collab with the sunglasses, like to achieve that is the thing to celebrate in itself because it's going to make all these other brands like have to come up to their level. Because let's take a hypothetical in the way that Satisfy just got 11 million.
11 million series B, I want to say. Like they're really early.
Yeah.
I would have assumed it was more, but yeah.
Right. So in the way that 11 million could just drop into the bank account of Satisfy, for lack of a better term, if somebody did that with Thor, that distribution in the US could boom in a way where that could be the pinnacle product offering at a reasonable price point in the US to the point where you can't get away from it. So like they're only one investment away, in my opinion, from being like the standard in this country as well. So that's why it's like everybody's got to be on notice in that regard because they can jump whenever they want to.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear like what their I don't know what their strategy is behind it. Like seems like they're focusing on like making great products. And like that's like for a long time that, Satisfy was kind of like a sleeper cell on that front where like they were not worried about growth. And like only recently, they a few months ago, like right after TRE announced that they hired the VP of footwear from the North Face and like posted a bunch of positions for like, I guess, local sales people, like regional sales people on the East Coast. And I know that they've talked to a few like running stores that previously didn't sell Satisfy in the Northeast. Like contact them to like start talking about carrying them. Prior to that, like you needed to be a Renegade or an LSD or a Loop type store in order to carry them. They were like really, really picky. And now they're like looking to grow more. So it'll be interesting to see with that growth, like if they can kind of keep their cool. I do worry they're gonna like fall trap to what Tracksmith and Bandit have, where like once it kind of blows up and becomes a little more mainstream, it'll have like a 3-year sweet spot, and then like become a little bit of a meme, I guess, or not like a meme, but like become a little bit of a we'll lose the cachet because like it's no longer this like kind of cutting edge, like inaccessible thing, which is kind of what they sell. Like it's inaccessibly priced. There's very little of it. It sells out and you can barely get it in like a lot of places. It's like without that, like what will they have? Uh, I hope they do well. Like I like all the Satisfy stuff I have. That I get it all secondary.
That's good. Or you get a good tool.
Big fan of eBay shopping. But yeah, like I've with Soar, like I they don't seem concerned with U.S. growth. Uh, Otherwise, I feel like we'd see more stuff kind of pop up in the U.S. Like they'd start like Satisfy's always had some sort of influence in the U.S. trail scene. And so like it's in somewhat of a known entity. Like they show up in USGQ and that sort of thing. Like they show up in Runner's World. It's like they're not unknown, and like Soar hasn't had that same sort of impact on the news and media side.
Good point.
It's like they might be okay with being, in Europe and UK for now.
Yeah, it's a great point, man. It's but I think about like for us to stay up to date with everything you're working on running supply. Can you shout out some of your? I'm always gonna put the stuff in like show notes and out for people to consume. But how can people stay up to date with what you were working on?
Yeah. For stuff I'm working on, like generally speaking, you can follow my Twitter. Like I post more uh flyby updates for that. Like I put out a mini bar app for Strava. Like I just make stuff from time to time. Like a lot of it's targeted towards runners, or cyclists for that matter. Because I'm like an honorary cyclist for the time being until I fix my knee. Um, it's like my personal Twitter is at Townsend Co. We'll link in the show notes here. And then my Substack is like I update religiously weekly. I've not missed a week since I started it. And I have like all the latest releases out there, and like pretty frequently post notes as well as stuff comes up. And then if you are not afraid of Reddit, I'm the moderator of r/running fashion. Come by, post stuff, lurk, search for things. There's a lot of stuff in there. No question is a dumb question. People have asked the same thing over and over. It's not so big now where I gotta crack down on that yet. So those are probably the 3 best spots.
That's cool. I know there's so many different ways for people to kind of challenge themselves a little bit more in the space, like whatever they want out of their relationship to like running in the fashion intersection and how deep they want to go in the pool. It seems like there's something for everybody, which is really sick. And I appreciate all the work you're doing to kind of curate those spaces for us.
Yeah, like I know I went into like a lot of the stuff too, like is like a lot of the outfits and stuff like that you see are like for the For You page and like for Instagram, like where like they're not all realistic, and like a lot of this stuff like you may never get, but like you still may be interested in following it, and like that's totally cool. Like there's plenty of stuff like I follow and I'm like I can't afford this, or like I do not have time to figure out how this thing works. But if you're interested in hearing about it, the Substack is still for you, and like don't feel like it's too cool for you. Like it's definitely not. A lot of people are like, oh, I can't pull this off. Like you also don't have to, and like just because it's coming out doesn't mean like you need to get it or like you need to be like, yeah, that's my thing. A lot of the stuff I'm just like trying to make people aware of. And like some of the stuff will hit, some of the stuff won't.
I think that might be the intro to this, that particular invitation to everybody. But yeah,
Like, and the dads and moms like running at 6 a.m. like do not care about wearing status. Like they're not going to be wearing Satisfy, and like that's totally that like their grind is still admirable. Like they're hopefully wearing like their kids, high school cross country hoodie. And like that is just as cool and probably more authentic than wearing like whatever the latest District Vision or like Thor thing that came out.
yeah. But and we think about right how like cyclical fashion can be, that high school hoodie you're wearing right now might be the inspiration for the next campaign that whatever brand does. So it's like we're always in orbit of cool, right? Like whether you are actively pushing it or you're consuming it or you're a lurker, that's like the coolest thing about this stuff, right? Because I like your encouragement of people to do it, because there is that kind of like takedown economy of being like, hey, this is the pinnacle expression of what this thing is. And it's $700 for this outfit all in, but like I'll pull my own like vintage t-shirt out and run in it because it fits the aesthetic that speaks to me, and I can kind of own the way that I express it and not necessarily have to like have the paycheck to balance it. So
Yeah, like I think like being true to yourself and like bringing your own like whatever your stuff is, like seeing people run in like their soccer stuff or whatever, like that's cool. I'm like, I didn't play soccer. I wasn't good enough to play soccer. That's cool. Like seeing someone that like clearly used to be a hockey player run in their like full old hockey sweats is also cool. I'm like, this guy's out in a 4 mile run wearing like full cotton and probably the worst thing ever. And like it is cool to see that. And like seeing someone out in like shorts over tights, I'm like, I used to do that. Like this person's like early on in their running journey. And like that's still like none of it's not cool. I think I like seeing the full range of like all the things we get. Like I'm happy to see people out running, and like I love observing the outfits, and like none of them to me I'm like are uncool until like they become performative and then they start becoming uncool. Where I'm like, this person is trying so hard and cashed out. And in cycling, we call that being a dentist.
oh yeah,
Be the dentist face where like you buy all the best stuff, but like do not necessarily engage with the hobby. Not to put dead people under the bus.
no, that's fair. I feel like that's a good place to wrap, right? Inviting everybody to take part in the conversation. It's dope.
Yeah, it's welcome. It's room for everyone. Thanks, dude.
A huge thank you again to Cole Townsend today for running supply, and a huge thank you to you for listening as well. At Small Brand Mentality, our goal really is to widen the aperture to understand what it's like to move, shake, and shape the running industry as it continues to evolve. And folks like Cole help us expand that perception, and we want to make sure that we keep bringing you quality content and conversations month over month, just so I can learn along with you. So if you can share with a friend, like, subscribe, whatever you can do to help get the word out to have more people commune with this information, we're eternally grateful. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.